What if I told you that fighting your negative thoughts is the exact reason they keep winning? Every time you try to push away fear, doubt, or worry, you're accidentally feeding them the very energy they need to multiply and steal your peace. Right now, there's a cosmic law so powerful that it can instantly transform any toxic thought pattern without a single moment of struggle. But 99% of people exhaust themselves doing the opposite of what actually works. The law of substitution operates like a divine cheat code that makes mental warfare completely unnecessary. Yet most people remain trapped in psychological combat that guarantees their own defeat. Every moment you spend fighting negative thoughts is a moment stolen from creating positive realities. Your consciousness operates like a broadcasting station that can only transmit one frequency at a time. When you engage in mental warfare against unwanted thoughts, you inadvertently tune your awareness to the exact frequency you seek to eliminate. But when you understand that consciousness creates through focus rather than force, you discover the spiritual technology that instantly transforms any mental state through deliberate substitution. The law of substitution reveals that two thoughts cannot occupy the same mental space simultaneously. Just as light displaces darkness automatically without struggle, positive consciousness displaces negative thinking naturally when you align your awareness with divine truth. This cosmic principle operates through spiritual mechanics that make resistance unnecessary and transformation inevitable. Your attempts to fight negative thoughts create the very resistance that strengthens them. Energy flows where attention goes, and attention focused on eliminating problems actually energizes the problems you seek to dissolve. When you declare war against fearful thinking, you position yourself as victim of mental forces rather than master of consciousness that commands every thought through divine authority. The biblical wisdom reveals this principle with profound clarity. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. This verse teaches substitution rather than suppression, replacement rather than resistance, positive focus rather than negative fighting. Divine intelligence designed your mind to create through conscious direction rather than unconscious reaction. When you assume responsibility for thought selection, rather than becoming victim of mental chaos, you activate the law of substitution that transforms consciousness through deliberate choice. Your awareness possesses unlimited capacity to generate thoughts that align with divine truth rather than human limitation. Most people remain trapped in mental suffering because they approach unwanted thoughts like enemies to defeat rather than frequencies to redirect. They exhaust themselves through futile battles that can never be won through force because consciousness operates according to spiritual law that responds to alignment rather than aggression. Fighting thoughts gives them the attention that sustains their existence, while substituting thoughts starves them of the energy they require to persist. Thomas Edison exemplified this principle when he transformed every failure into a stepping stone toward success by refusing to focus on what went wrong and instead concentrating completely on what would work better. During his development of the incandescent light bulb, Edison conducted over 10,000 experiments that produced no functional result. Instead of fighting thoughts of failure or dwelling on repeated disappointments, he immediately substituted each unsuccessful attempt with renewed vision of perfect illumination. Edison understood that consciousness creates according to its dominant focus, not its occasional intentions. His awareness remained anchored in solution consciousness rather than problem consciousness because he practiced the law of substitution automatically. When thoughts of impossibility arose, he instantly replaced them with thoughts of innovative possibility. When feelings of frustration emerged, he immediately substituted them with excitement about discovering new approaches. His success emerged from mental discipline that refused to entertain thoughts misaligned with his desired outcome. Edison proved that persistent substitution of negative thinking with positive focus creates the consciousness that inevitably manifests corresponding external results. His inventions flowed through awareness that practiced substitution rather than suppression, creation rather than combat. The moment you recognize an unwanted thought, you activate your divine authority to replace it instantly with aligned thinking that serves your highest good. This substitution requires no struggle because spiritual law operates through choice rather than force. When you consciously select thoughts that harmonize with divine truth, lower frequency thoughts dissolve automatically through lack of sustaining attention. Your consciousness possesses unlimited capacity to generate thoughts that align perfectly with your desired experiences. Fear-based thoughts can be instantly replaced with faith-based knowing. Doubt-filled patterns transform into confidence-filled certainty through conscious choice. The practice of mental substitution begins with recognition that you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes and directs thoughts according to spiritual principles. When you identify as the witness rather than the victim of mental activity, you claim your divine authority to choose which thoughts receive your attention and which thoughts you instantly replace with aligned alternatives. Abraham Lincoln demonstrated this principle during the Civil War, when he refused to focus on the impossibility of preserving the Union and instead concentrated completely on the divine vision of unified nation, guided by spiritual principles. Despite facing seemingly insurmountable opposition from generals, politicians, and citizens who declared victory impossible, Lincoln practiced constant substitution of doubt with faith, despair with hope, division with unity. Lincoln's consciousness remained anchored in divine possibility rather than human limitation, because he understood that leadership requires mental discipline that refuses to entertain thoughts misaligned with desired outcomes. When thoughts of defeat arose, he immediately replaced them with thoughts of eventual triumph. When feelings of discouragement emerged, he instantly substituted them with renewed commitment to divine purpose. His success in preserving the Union flowed through awareness that practiced substitution as spiritual discipline rather than positive thinking technique. Lincoln proved that persistent replacement of limiting thoughts with divine vision creates the consciousness that enables impossible achievements through alignment with cosmic truth, rather than human reasoning. Now I invite you to activate this transformative power by writing in the comments below, "My mind reflects only divine perfection." When you make this declaration publicly, you establish spiritual law that transforms mental chaos into divine order through conscious selection. Your written commitment creates accountability with cosmic intelligence while demonstrating your willingness to practice substitution rather than suppression. The law of substitution operates through immediate replacement rather than gradual elimination. The instant you recognize thoughts that contradict your desired reality, you possess divine authority to substitute them with thoughts that support your intended experience. This replacement requires no time delay because consciousness operates through instantaneous choice rather than progressive struggle. Spiritual substitution works because divine thoughts carry higher frequency than human thoughts, creating automatic displacement that requires no effort to sustain. When you align your thinking with cosmic truth, lower vibrations cannot maintain their existence in the elevated consciousness you establish through deliberate choice. This principle operates like tuning a radio to desired frequency. Once alignment occurs, interference dissolves naturally. The story of Peter walking on water illustrates this principle operating through biblical demonstration. When Jesus called Peter to step out of the boat, Peter's initial thoughts could have focused on impossibility, danger, and certain failure. Instead of fighting these natural fears, Peter substituted them with thoughts of divine possibility, supernatural support, and inevitable success through faith. Peter practiced substitution by replacing thoughts of physical limitation with recognition of spiritual power operating through his awareness. When the natural mind said, "Water cannot support human weight," he immediately substituted it with faith that divine law transcends physical law. His consciousness remained anchored in Jesus' authority rather than natural limitation. His ability to walk on water flowed through consciousness that practiced substitution rather than suppression of limiting thoughts. Peter proved that alignment with divine truth through mental substitution creates awareness that enables miraculous demonstration despite apparent physical impossibility. But when he substituted faith-based thoughts with fear-based focus on the storm, he immediately began to sink. His experience validates the principle that conscious thought replacement activates spiritual law that transcends human limitation. Mental substitution becomes effortless when you recognize that divine thoughts feel expansive, peaceful, and empowering, while human thoughts feel contractive, chaotic, and depleting. This internal guidance system enables instant recognition of which thoughts deserve your attention and which thoughts require immediate replacement with aligned alternatives. Your emotional responses serve as divine radar that detects whether your current thinking harmonizes with spiritual truth or contradicts cosmic principles. When thoughts create feelings of fear, anxiety, doubt, or limitation, these emotions signal the need for immediate substitution with thoughts that generate feelings of faith, peace, confidence, and possibility. The practice develops spiritual muscle that strengthens through consistent application rather than perfect performance. Each moment you choose substitution over suppression, alignment over argument, creation over combat, you build consciousness that naturally gravitates toward divine thinking rather than human limitation. This mental discipline transforms from effortful practice into automatic spiritual response. Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer, exemplified this principle when she transformed a devastating shark attack into continued competitive triumph. She refused to focus on what she had lost, and instead concentrated completely on what remained possible. Despite losing her arm at age 13 while surfing in Hawaii, which could have justified permanent limitation, Hamilton practiced constant substitution of victim consciousness with victor consciousness. Hamilton understood that consciousness creates according to its current focus rather than past experience. Her awareness remained anchored in divine potential rather than physical limitation because she practiced substitution as spiritual discipline. When thoughts of "I can't surf anymore" arose from her injury, she immediately replaced them with recognition of "I will find a new way to surf." When feelings of limitation emerged from external circumstances, she instantly substituted them with awareness of unlimited creative capacity. Her transformation, back to professional surfing, flowed through consciousness that practiced substitution rather than suppression of limiting thoughts. Hamilton proved that persistent replacement of trauma-based thinking with possibility-based knowing creates the awareness that enables extraordinary achievement despite devastating physical circumstances. The law of substitution eliminates the exhausting struggle against unwanted thoughts by redirecting mental energy toward desired consciousness rather than dissipating it through futile resistance. When you understand that attention creates expansion, you naturally choose to expand divine truth rather than expand human limitation through misdirected focus. This principle operates through cosmic efficiency that accomplishes maximum transformation through minimum effort. Because alignment with spiritual law requires less energy than opposition to natural principles. Fighting thoughts creates internal conflict that depletes vital force, while substituting thoughts creates internal harmony that multiplies creative power through divine cooperation. Your consciousness possesses unlimited capacity to access thoughts that perfectly align with any desired experience. Divine intelligence operates as infinite library of perfect thoughts, ideal emotions, and aligned inspirations that become available through conscious selection rather than random reception. When you approach thought selection as spiritual practice rather than mental technique, you activate cosmic resources that provide unlimited supply of consciousness-elevating alternatives. The biblical promise declares that, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he," revealing that identity emerges from sustained thought patterns rather than temporary circumstances. When you practice substitution consistently, you literally transform your identity from someone who struggles with limiting thoughts into someone who naturally thinks divine truth. This identity transformation occurs through accumulated mental choices that establish new consciousness patterns aligned with spiritual principles rather than human limitation. Each moment you choose substitution over suppression, you reinforce neural pathways that support divine thinking while weakening mental habits that sustained limitation-based awareness. Align with cosmic truth and declare with absolute conviction, my consciousness naturally gravitates toward divine thoughts that create my perfect reality through spiritual law that never fails. When you maintain this awareness, substitution becomes automatic because your identity aligns with consciousness that thinks according to divine nature rather than human conditioning. The law of substitution reveals that mental transformation occurs through conscious choice rather than unconscious struggle, spiritual alignment rather than human effort, divine cooperation rather than personal force. When you embrace this principle, thought management becomes joyful spiritual practice rather than exhausting mental warfare. Your consciousness operates as sacred temple that deserves thoughts worthy of divine inhabitants rather than mental pollution that contradicts your spiritual nature. The law of substitution provides the cosmic technology that maintains perfect mental environment through conscious curation rather than constant combat. Divine intelligence eagerly provides unlimited supply of thoughts that align perfectly with your highest vision when you activate spiritual law through consistent practice of substitution rather than suppression. Your mental freedom awaits the moment you cease fighting thoughts and start replacing them with divine alternatives that create the consciousness supporting your intended reality. Trust the cosmic principle that makes mental transformation inevitable through alignment with spiritual law rather than opposition to natural processes. The law of substitution operates with mathematical precision when you cooperate with divine intelligence rather than struggling against universal principles that govern consciousness creation. Step boldly into the magnificent understanding that your thoughts obey spiritual law that responds to conscious direction rather than unconscious reaction. When you practice substitution as divine discipline, mental chaos transforms into cosmic order that supports unlimited creation through awareness aligned with infinite truth. Embrace the transformative recognition that every unwanted thought represents opportunity to practice divine authority through conscious substitution that strengthens spiritual muscle while weakening limitation patterns. Your mental mastery develops through consistent application of cosmic principles rather than perfect performance of human techniques. Claim your divine inheritance as consciousness that naturally thinks according to spiritual truth rather than human limitation through practice of substitution that aligns awareness with cosmic intelligence. The law of substitution awaits your recognition that mental transformation occurs through spiritual cooperation rather than mental combat. Practice substitution as sacred discipline that honors divine nature while releasing human limitation through conscious choice that activates spiritual law supporting unlimited mental freedom. Your mental mastery begins now. Every unwanted thought becomes an opportunity to practice divine authority through conscious substitution. Choose thoughts worthy of your divine inheritance and watch reality transform to match your elevated consciousness.